Greetings and welcome to another Diamond Dave retrospective in which I, Diamond Dave, shall be reviewing my work on YouTube. In this one, I shall be reviewing my 2011 film Vigilante. Now, this is going to be a very special retrospective for me to do because I'm reviewing what I see as my best film that I've ever made as a content creator. That is subjective, but in my personal opinion, as the creator, I see this film as the creme de la creme of my work. I've even got the original script here. I found it amongst a bunch of old rubbish that I had. A lot of the scripts that I've written over the years have been lost somewhere, but this is one of the few scripts that I managed to keep around. So because I'm reviewing what I perceive to be my best film, I'm also going to be reading parts of the parts of the script that were either altered or omitted from the final film. Now, even though I see this as my best film, I'm not going to say it's my best script because I don't want to undersell anything I have written either before or since making Vigilante, but it's definitely one of my best scripts. But it's the way we adapted it into a film and how it was executed on all fronts, the way it was filmed, the way it was acted. Definitely, I'm going to be talking a lot about the acting in this film because I feel that it's the acting on all of our parts that's made the film what it is in terms of its greatness and the post-production special effects and just the overall execution of how we did it. Now, there are a couple of additional reasons why I feel this is my best film. I feel that as an actor that this was my best performance that I have ever done. Again, that is subjective, but I don't want to come across as pompous because that's the last thing I am. I'm definitely not doing that. But I just feel as an actor that I really pulled out all the stops in this film to really give a very convincing performance of this new character that I made, this new villainous character after doing Big Bad Dave, Vince Carter. I see Vince Carter as my best character that I've ever played, and definitely, personally, I feel it's my best performance as an actor. Also, this film is the only film I've ever made that got me this close to winning an award. Back in 2011, when it was originally made, I entered it into a film festival called Cinemagic, and it got nominated down into the top 3 in the category of innovation. And unfortunately, while I didn't win the award, I was announced as being one of the nominees. And me and my family got a free pass to attend the event and ceremony because I was one of the nominees. And on a personal level, as a result of making this film and choosing to enter it into Cinemagic, I met and befriended Terry Bamber, who is a London-based film producer, assistant director, location manager, actor, any job in film that you can think of, he's probably indefinitely done it. He is a lovely man, and since meeting him at that ceremony, we've become good friends and we're still in contact. So this film has done a lot of good for me, both as a content creator, but also on a very personal level as well, which is why I'm going to try and make this retrospective a very special one, including showing the script and reading things that were changed or left out in the resulting film. The concept of the story of this film is a very basic one. It's your typical damsel in distress story in which an innocent young girl is kidnapped by an evil man, and it's up to the hero to swoop in and save the day. But I feel it was how it was written and how all three of us acted together in it really helped make what is a simple story concept, the whole damsel in distress concept, all three of us together, me as the villain, the girl who plays the heroine, and Ross who plays the hero to save her in it, to save her in this. All of us helped make it very three-dimensional in how we performed our characters and how we personified our characters. The acting, I feel, is definitely the strongest part of this film. There are so many other things great with it, but I do feel it's the acting that what really makes Vigilante as good as it is. Now, as with a couple of other films on this channel, Vigilante was uploaded more than once onto this channel. The reason being that the original upload from 2011 for some reason was not in HD. It was of good quality, but it wasn't 1080 high definition, and I don't remember how that didn't turn out to be HD. But a few years later, when I was going through my hard drives, I did find a high definition quality version of the movie within my hard drive, and I decided to take that out and upload it again, this time promoting it as the HD 1080 version in 2016, because because I feel this was my best film, I obviously wanted it to be uploaded in the best possible quality. So there are currently two versions of Vigilante which exist on my channel, the original upload and the new HD upload. So obviously, for quality purposes of the review, I'm going to be using footage from the high definition version. So this is Vigilante. It was originally uploaded on the 2nd of September 2011, and it was uploaded a second time in HD on the 22nd of September 2016.
Liana!
Okie dokie, so I have quite a bit to talk about this opening. I feel it was a very strong opening. It really establishes what is going on immediately. And this thing that I do, in which I hold a stethoscope to the girl's chest whilst pointing a gun to her head to listen to her heart beating, that was actually inspired from the very first Saw movie. There's a scene in which Zepp, one of Jigsaw's apprentices, has taken a woman prisoner, and he deliberately listens to her heart beating whilst holding the gun to her head at the same time, to deliberately listen to the panic and fear that he is inflicting upon her. And that's exactly what I wanted to do with this opening scene of me as Vince Carter, because I just thought it was a very cool, very villainous thing to do, just to add on to the sadism of this character that I'm playing. And the girl who plays the heroine in this was very good, because she actually studied drama and stage for A level. So I'm calling back to something similar I said in Goths and Chavs. Always look for what your actors and or actresses do in their free time or as a hobby or education. Because this girl did do stage work and drama at A level, she was able to bring quite a bit to her character, even though physically she couldn't do much because she was supposed to be tied up and gagged. She was able to very naturally respond to how I was acting around her with those improvised little shrieks, muffles of fear, to really bring that she's really, really scared. And her reactions to how I behave around her really helps make that whole situation much more authentic, and it makes me come across as more scary. She even brought a scarf with her, and that's what we use to gag her at the mouth. So because she has already has experience in stage and drama, she was quite comfortable in allowing herself to be put into an uncomfortable situation for filmmaking purposes. Now, Vigilante started ever so slightly differently in the script. Originally, at the beginning, it actually shows her getting kidnapped. So I'm now going to read the original beginning from how it was written in the script. I beg your pardon for any potential bad grammar, but this was my original draft, so the wording might not be as good as it should be. A pretty young woman is walking down a street, gradually approaching a car. She has nothing to do with the car and intends to walk straight past it. However, the occupant is looking at her approach in the wing mirror, slowly tapping his fingers. As soon as the girl is walking alongside the car, a masked man lounges out and drags her into the car and drives off. A young man is looking at his forearm in disgust. We do not see what is on his forearm, but he is ashamed of what is on it. This is slightly alluded to later on in the actual film. It's supposed to be a tattoo symbolising his membership in a certain gang. He finds guns on the table and puts them away. He picks up his phone and tries ringing someone, but they do not pick up. He then tries another number, and it cuts to a run-down base where a nest of criminals live. We find the young woman detained, tied to a chair, her mobile going off. A gloved hand seizes it and switches it off. The hand then holds a gun to the terrified young woman's head and produces a stethoscope to listen to her heartbeat in a taunting fashion to hear how scared she is. So originally this did start off ever so slightly differently. But we just decided to start the film with the girl already shown, captured, and detained. We didn't really need to show her actually getting kidnapped. The whole point now is to establish the story. Why is she here? Why is she in this position? And why is this man doing this to her, holding her prisoner? So again, less is more. We didn't actually need to show the kidnapping. We just needed to establish the story there. She's here now, as is the villain, and now this other man is trying to look for her. Just a fun piece of behind the scenes trivia. The building that we used to film Vigilante in was a ran-down, condemned borstal, a former youth correctional facility. And quite ironically, when he was at university, my father studied psychology as an understudy. And as part of that psychology course, he was assigned to work temporarily in this borstal. So decades later, after my dad worked there as a volunteer, me, his son, would return there after it was abandoned and condemned to film in it. And it's probably the best location I've ever had for a film, because it was just perfect for the story and the concept, and because the building was so big, we had so many opportunities to utilize and take advantage of to really set the grim setting and overall atmosphere of the film. I always prefer my women like this, detained, bound, and helpless. Most people would describe that as evil, perverse, psychotic. Although that may be, that kind of works for me. Oh. Even if I do say so myself, that is a very good villain monologue on my part, and that is probably my personal favourite line of dialogue that I've ever said in any of my films, because it just establishes what kind of a man Vince Carter is immediately. You already know he's the villain in the opening shot of me holding the gun to the girl's head, but it's in this scene, just within that brief monologue, it defines what kind of a character and what kind of a man Vince Carter is. And this is one of the reasons why I cite Vince Carter as perhaps my best character, because unlike other characters like Big Bad Dave, who just shows up, I'm the villain, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, Vince Carter, through my opening lines of dialogue, I really flesh out Vince Carter as a character and a personality and his mindset. And that I think that makes him a more three-dimensional villain, that we're able to pick out his characteristics through the opening lines that I speak as him. So from the first lines that I deliver as Vince Carter, what kind of a man is he? Well, based on what he is saying and how he is behaving, I lay my hands on this young girl's shoulders and say, I always prefer my women like this, detained, bound, and helpless. So, clearly, He's a sadist, probably a misogynist, definitely not a feminist. And it is implied I always prefer my women like this. There's a small implication there that Liana, the heroine, is not the first victim of his in terms of him kidnapping people. And he goes on to further state that whilst most people would view his actions and mindset as evil, perverse, psychotic, it kind of works for him. So Vince is level-headed and grounded enough in reality to acknowledge that what he is doing is very wrong, immoral, and evil. He understands that. He understands that what he's doing is very evil, but he doesn't care. He just says it kind of works for him. Now, Big Bad Dave was delusional and didn't see himself as evil, even though he clearly was a villain, and tries to justify himself in some way. And I do make a prequel to Big Bad Dave to try and flesh him out as a more tragic villain. But Vince Carter, on the other hand, is a complete monster. He embraces his evil. He acknowledges that he's evil, but he just doesn't care. Simply put, he is an unrepentant, sadistic bastard, and I relished every second I spent playing him because, as an actor, it was just so much fun for me to play this really dark character. A lot of actors in the industry say that they find villains much more fun and enjoyable to play, and they're right, they really are. And there's absolutely no lighter side to Vince Carter. He's pure evil. He's just downright bad, and that's why I deliberately wore an all-black three-piece suit, a black jacket, black shirt, and black trousers, just to symbolise that he is a force of pure darkness and totally black-hearted and evil. He was a very enjoyable character to play.
Who are you? Why am I here?
My name is Vince Carter, but I already know you, Liana Troy.
What?
Oh yes, I know everything about you. Your brother always used to talk about you. Come along, my dear. Surely you know about your brother's past.
Yeah, but he's changed. He's a good man now. What have you got to do with him?
Quite a lot. You see, me and your brother used to be a great team. Stephen was one of my best people. Until he decided to turn his back on me and disengage from my syndicate.
I know Stephen's done bad things in the past. But you found him when he was vulnerable, and you poisoned him to do your evil deeds.
I merely found a man who was desperate for money to support his family, and I offered him a job. Oh yes, he really relished what I made him do.
You're wrong. He regrets every day what he did for you. He isn't like you. You're a murderer!
And now the story unravels little by little. This is one of the things I love about Vigilante, because everybody's motivations are very clear in this film. As I said, the likes of Big Bad Dave and Enforcer Butch, I show up, I'm the villain, ha ha ha, someone has to come and stop me, save the day, etc, etc. It's much more fleshed out and three-dimensional in this film. A more three-dimensional villain and hero and heroine. Vince has a motivation, and Steve, as played by Ross McConaughey, has a motivation, and Liana, as portrayed by Rachel, She doesn't really have a motivation except to get out of the horrible situation that she's in. And I'm going to expand a bit on that now and what I think of the characters. All three characters are connected through a mutual link. And as you could pick up through the exposition dialogue between myself as Vince Carter and Rachel as Leanna, the heroine, the story basically is that Leanna's brother Steve, who is seen, plays by Ross McCon at the beginning of the film, going into the house. He once worked for Vince Carter as an underling in his Crimson Hand crime syndicate. And eventually, after a couple of years, Steve decided that he no longer wanted to be a criminal and left Vince's syndicate, wanting to turn over a new leaf and lead a civilian life. Now, Vince isn't happy about this because, as his boss, Vince believes that no one should ever leave his crime syndicate, and anybody who does decide to leave is a traitor and must be punished in some way or another. So because Vince isn't happy that Steve has left his syndicate after years of loyal service, Vince decides to kidnap his little sister Leanna and use her as emotional blackmail to force Steve into working for him. So those are Vince's motivations for why he's got this poor girl kidnapped and held prisoner. And it's up to Steve to be forced to face his past in order to save her. I really love how this film covers all areas of the moral spectrum, so to speak, evil to good, dark to light, but there's a bit of grey area as well in between. You have Vince, who represents pure darkness and evil, as he's the antagonist of the film, and as I said, he's an unrepentant sadist. And you have the grey area, which Steve, as played by Ross, falls into. He is an ex-criminal, and for years he did do jobs for Vince, which included killing people, because he was part of a crime syndicate. But he has a redemption that makes his colour greyer and lighter, because he had the morality to see that what he was doing was wrong, and decided that he no longer wanted to be part of this. So he turned his back on a life of crime and is trying to lead a civilian life away from Vince's power and control and influence. It's also implied that the only reason why Steve chose to align himself with Vince and his gang is because it's implied that Steve and Leanna came from a very poor family and were poverty stricken, and Steve felt that he had no other choice but to join Vince's crime syndicate as a means to make enough money in order to sustain both himself and his sister. And Vince was this big rich crime boss who could give him all the money he needed to support his poverty-stricken family. So there was a bit of a moral decision there. So yes, Steve would be in the grey area. He is the hero, and he's not bad, but he's not good either. And there's Leanna, the heroine, as played by Rachel. She represents the white area, light. She's totally innocent. She has done nothing wrong. She's the innocent, vulnerable figure who's being dragged into this through the actions of two men. The actions of Vince Carter for seducing her brother to the dark side and turning her brother into a criminal, and the actions of her brother for choosing for a brief period of time to join the dark side and be a criminal. And through the consequences of both those men's actions, this innocent young woman is dragged into a situation that she shouldn't be in the first place. It's through the sins of both men that she's in in the predicaments that she's in now. And I like how the girl who plays Liana is able to bounce off me in terms of the verbal clash between myself and her, because even though she is tied to a chair and unable to physically move, she's still able to stand up to Vince in a way. She's able to verbally fight back against him, even though she's scared. Of course she's scared. She's been kidnapped, and there's this very evil man holding her against her will. But despite being in this bad position and being visibly scared, she still has that sass, that feistiness in her to try and verbally fight back against me, even though she can't move, but I can. And it really builds up the tension between us more, that even though she's in a vulnerable position, she's still able to verbally lash out and fight back against me while I lounge at her and act all creepy and sadistic towards her. So it's a good. We all, as characters, different kinds of characters on the moral spectrum between evil, grey area, and light, we were all able to complement each other's respective roles.
My brother is greater than you will ever be. He realised what he was doing was wrong, and he did the right thing by having nothing to do with you anymore.
He still bears the mark of the Crimson Hand. For the record, no one calls me pathetic. Okie dokie, so those scenes between myself and Rachel were actually, I think, the very last scenes to be recorded, if I remember correctly, even after the finale. There's a big action sequence coming up, akin to Enforcer Butch, the last showdown, but again, as with most of my other films, Vigilante was shot out of sequence. The very first scenes we recorded was the finale, the last bit coming up now, and the last segment, the last parts of the film that were shot were these scenes between myself and Rachel. For those scenes of me and Rachel, Ross was not available, so I recruited my old friend Danny, who helped me on my earlier films like Street Hero, Goths and Chavs, and Practical Joke Gone Wrong. I brought him in to step into the breach to man the video camera to film these scenes between me and Rachel. This was the first time in about 2 years that Danny helped me in one of my films as a behind the scenes role, as opposed to the front of the camera roles that he plays in my earlier work. But by the way, that was Danny sitting in the chair holding the video camera to simulate Liana's point of view as I shoved the rag in her face, and Rachel was safely crouched off camera, just making all those little muffled shrieks, so she was not harmed. Now, originally in the script there was a subplot going on which revolved around Steve to flesh him out a little bit, while there was this plot between me and Rachel as the captor and the captive. There was also an additional subplot going on in the script that revolved around Steve actively looking for Leanna and searching for answers as to where Vince may have taken her. And a part of that plot involved a scene between him and another character that was supposed to have taken place between that bit there that I shoved the rag in her face and the scene that he answers the phone. There was supposed to be another scene in between those segments of the film, but for time constraints and because we couldn't find another actor to play this additional minor role, we just cut it out from the film completely. But as a special treat, I'm going to read from the script how it was originally meant to be, as written down between Steve and this additional minor character who was cut out of the film altogether. So this unrecorded scene just was Steve visiting another ex-member of the Crimson Hand, trying to interrogate him, so to speak, and try and get information as to where Leanna could have been taken. And there's also a few more exposition lines regarding Steve's history with Vince Carter and the Crimson Hands gang that weren't in the final cut of the film. So this is how the scene was supposed to go like. And again, excuse any potential bad grammar, because this is just a draft of the film. So I beg your pardon for that. Steve calls to the house of a man he knew from the Crimson Hand. Like Steve, he has left the Crimson Hand and trying to put his own criminal past behind him. Stephen, I'm saying the names of the characters before I read their respective lines just to differentiate who they are. Stephen says, "Let me in, Stuart, it's me." Stuart, "Shit, all right, come in." Stephen forces himself into the house. Stuart, "It's nice to see you, Steve, after all this time. How are you?" Steve, "Now is not the time for arse-licking, Stuart. I need information." Stuart plants himself down on a chair heavily. Stuart, "All right, Stephen, what the hell do you want?" Steve, "Vince has abducted my sister." Stuart, "How do you know it was him?" Steve produces the calling card with Vince's signature on it, and Stuart flinches slightly. Stuart, "Look, Steve, you should have known what you were getting yourself into when you joined the Crimson Hand. Once you're in there, there is no going back." Stephen turns on Stuart angrily. Steve, "You know perfectly well I never enjoyed being part of the Crimson Hand. I still regret everything I did for that man. That's why I left, because I didn't want to hurt people. I wanted to live a good life and support my family. I know you left too because you didn't like it either." Stuart, I had my reasons as much as you. You were his favourite, Steve. That is why he has targeted you out of the ones who left the gang. Steve, it sickens me that I was that manipulative bastard's top man. Now he has taken my little sister from me, and if anything happens to her, I would never forgive myself, as well as those who could have helped me, but chose not to. So start talking. Steve points his gun at Stuart. Stuart, I see it still hasn't left you, Steve. Very well. I have nothing left to live for, so it won't hurt my chances telling you. Steve, tell me! Stuart, I admit it. Like you, I hated working for Vince. I too was a weak, desperate man, and he offered me great fortune. Ever since I left, I've been terrified that he would come back, but unlike you, I have no family. Last I heard, he is still operating in this town. Stephen, where? Stuart, well, over the past 5 years, the Crimson Hand has been falling apart. Since you left, ironically, Vince has been trying to get more operatives to work for him, but none of them lived up to his standards, and well, you know what he did to them. Flashes to a man on his knees looking up at Vince helplessly and being shot for being ineffective and obsolete as a soldier. Steve, yes, I know him all too well, which is why I have to rescue my little sister. It's bad enough I got her into this, let alone my own mistakes I made when I worked for him. I'm trying to make up for my sins. Stuart, I can tell you are sincere, and I really can't ignore that. I believe Vince is still there at that ran-down old condemned place he used to store stolen goods in. Steve, that place on the old Rathgale Road, I thought he left that place years ago. Stuart, he still uses it occasionally, more so because the police have been tracking him down, but he still has a strong defence force. Steve, they'll be easy for me. Stuart, so you're going to kill again? As I recall, you swore never to take a life of another human being again. Steve, I did, but this is different. I'm going to save Leanna, and Vince will be the last person I kill in my life. It's going to end the way it should have begun. Him. Steve turns to leave. Stuart, good luck. And basically that's what leads into Steve receiving the phone call from Vince. There's actually another little piece in here that Vince says after it cuts back from the scene that I just read. So after this unfilmed scene between Steve and Stuart, it was going to cut back to Vince and Leanna, and Vince was going to say this. Vince talking. I see you miss your brother dearly. As a man of good form, I will allow you to talk to him. Vince dials a phone number on Leanna's phone and holds it up to her face. Steve answers. Leanna. Steve. Vince takes the phone away from her before she can say anything else, apart from her brother's name. Vince. Well, Steve, I can only guess you received my calling card. Well, that's basically it for that. So that scene would have provided a bit more exposition about Steve's past and more background on Vince Carter, and it would have. We just couldn't really put it in. I don't think it would have fitted the pace of the film, and we had time constraints, and we just didn't have another actor to assume this additional role of Stuart. Although there are lines in it that I think were pretty good to make Steve more badass and really build up this personal vendetta he has against Vince Carter. So now we're entering the last act of the movie.
Steve!
Liana!
Well, Steve, I can only assume you received my calling card. I recommend, if you're still concerned about your little sister, that you pledge your allegiance to me once again.
Oh, don't worry, Vince. I'll be seeing you very soon.
How enlightening. It's time for your emotional reunion with your brother. Stand up.
Okay, Vince, let's see how you deal with this.
Okie dokie, so this is the finale, and that shot of Ross just coming round the corner with the gun was literally the very first shot of the film that was recorded. As I said, the rest was out of sequence. This whole action sequence of Ross storming the base and shooting all the guards was the very first thing to be recorded, along with the final standoff between him, Vince, and Liana that's about to follow in a moment. Now, for any of you wondering about what the laptop was supposed to be, basically Steve was setting up a timed laptop bomb so he can run in, save Liana, and escape in the nick of time before it exploded and took the base and Vince as well, while him and Liana walked off into the sunsets while everything went in flames behind them. But I digress. So because my character wasn't on screen during this particular portion of the film, Ross gave me the camera and told me to record all of these scenes of him walking about with the gun, shooting everybody, and he gave me a very good tip on how to physically record something like this, how to record an action sequence that involved a big shootout. He just said to me, "Dave, follow the gun." Those 3 words, follow the gun. And I adhered to what he said, and it turned out to be exactly the right thing to do. I wasn't focusing on Ross himself. I was literally focusing on the object that he was holding in his hand, namely the gun. So every time he moved, I automatically fixed the camera on the gun just for the snapping, and it turned out that's exactly how it was meant to be done, because as you can see, the action sequence was all very well done, both from a filming and editing point of view. Now, I spoke about smoke and mirrors in my first Diamond Day of retrospective when I was talking about Street Hero, when it came to doing action sequences. There were only two guys who played Vince Carter's foot soldiers who were guarding the base, but because they were wearing masks and their features were quite obscured, we literally just recycled those same two guys over and over again to give the illusion that there was an army of henchmen guarding the base from Steve. So Steve kept killing the same two guys over and over again, and every time we cut to another part of the base, we would just reposition them in another place, just to give that illusion that there were more than just two people guarding the base. There was practically an army guarding the base, and Steve was blasting his way through them. Also, additionally, Ross's knowledge of After Effects and CGI, the bits that he is pointing the gun upwards to unseen soldiers, he puts little puffs of smoke on the ground, little explosions going around his feet on the ground to give the illusion that there were soldiers and snipers on the roof of the building firing down on him, where in reality there was actually literally nobody there. He was literally just firing up at the sky at non-existent actors. So a combination of recycling the same two guys over and over again, and a little bit of CGI explosions here and there just give that illusion that this was a big army of enemies that Steve was fighting to get to his little sister. And now that we're here, the final showdown.
Liana! Let her go, it's me you want!
Indeed, Steve. Pledge your allegiance to me again, and I'll let her go.
Not gonna happen, Vince.
Come now, Steve. You loves working for me. I give you money so you could supply for your family, including your little sister here.
I wasted 2 years of my time working for you, Vince. Never again!
Do you really think you found God, Steve? Do you think that by killing my men and killing me that you will have achieved your place in heaven? That you have made up for the sins that you caused? We both know that you relished every life you took in my name.
In the name of everyone you killed, it's time you died, Vince.
I think differently. Say goodbye to little sister, Steve.
No! Liana, catch! Liana, I'm sorry.
You've done nothing to apologise for. You're hurt.
It's okay. Let's end this. C'est la vie, Vince.
So before I get into what I like to call the final reflections part of the review, I have to talk about this ending. Fucking hell. What a climax. Again, Vigilante, my best film. But I digress. So here's me being all evil and really relishing my sadism, just how I'm emotionally blackmailing Steve into pledging his allegiance to me again and demanding him to join me again, otherwise I will execute his sister on the spot. And him just having this verbal standoff with me, with the Leanna caught in the middle. Now, the girl who played Leanna, Rachel, is actually a few inches taller than me. So originally, when we were filming, it was like this. I was sort of pointing the gun upwards because this girl is a bit taller than I am, and I'm short on the arse. So, in order for me to look more intimidating, which I was supposed to be because I'm the villain, she actually had to crouch down to my head's level to make her look smaller and more vulnerable and make me look more imposing and more intimidating. This wouldn't be the last time we would have to do this in one of my films. It would happen again due to my vertically challenged status. Anyway, so I shoot Steve to wound him. I do. The thing about this, just another element of my character. I don't shoot Steve to kill him. I only shoot Steve to injure and disarm him, so he can still be alive while he watches me kill his sister right in front of him, which just adds on more to the sadism of Vince Carter. But she gets lucky, kicks me in the leg. I'm distracted from the momentary pain. Steve flings the gun over to Leanna. She grabs it. Bang. And that was the first and only take we did of that. It was absolutely amazing. It's the only take ever we did of her catching the gun, turning round and shooting me. Because it was just perfect timing, perfect hand-eye coordination on Rachel's part to catch the gun off of Ross after he tossed it to her, just to grab it right in the heat of the moment, turn over and bang in one shot. And I just remember Ross saying after that take, "We're not doing another one." And I agrees with him. We didn't need to do another one. It was just all perfectly done in that one take. Ping, pang, pow! He throws the gun, she catches it, and bang, I'm dead. I also decided, instead of Ross killing me, why not have Rachel, who played Leanna the heroine, kill me instead? Because usually in these damsel in distress stories or movies, the hero swoops in, kills the villain, and saves the heroine, and the heroine is all, "Thank you for saving me," etc., etc. And I wanted to do my own twist on the typical damsel in distress formula. Instead of the hero just straightforwardly coming in, killing the villain, and saving the heroine, why not have the heroine kill the villain instead? Give the damsel in distress a bit of power, because Vince has been a total bastard to Leanna throughout the course of this film, and Steve has already had his fair share of fighting. So I thought, why not give Leanna her dues and get her to kill me instead, in payback for all the torture that I subjected her to throughout the film. I've died a lot of times in my films because I'm the bad guy and villains tend to die. But out of all the times I've died, Jesus, I'm starting to sound like Sean Bean here. That is my favourite death scene. I remember I was watching Ross edit this, putting it together on his computer after we did all the principal shitting. And I was watching him edit this last scene in which I'm defeated, and I saw him put in the big muzzle flash when Rachel shoots me, and then adding the big blood spurts coming out of me as I fall to the ground. And after he played it back over on the editing suite he was using, I just remember he turned to me and said, "Dave, this is the best thing that has ever happened to you." My death scene, being shot through the heart by a beautiful young woman, and that's the best thing that's ever happened to me. He probably was not wrong. He was not wrong. Oh dear. But yeah, that was the cherry on top of what I see to be my best film. Just, I'm defeated in a very spectacular fashion due to the physicality of it, the hand-eye coordination of the actors and actresses, the camera work, and the post-production CGI effects. I remember a couple of years ago in 2018, which would have been 7 years after this was made, I entered Vigilante into another film festival called Film Devar, and this was a festival that they screened all the entries on a big projector screen on the wall. It was a big showcase night that they would show all the films that were entered in their entirety onto a big cinema screen, and you could get a drink and popcorn, etc., etc., and all the other filmmakers and entries would be there to watch all of these different films. And I remember whenever Vigilante was being shown, I remember at the exact moment where I'm shot at the end, I remember hearing the audience go, "Whoa!" Just like that. They just went, "Whoa!" Because I think they were surprised just at the suddenness and the just how well it was put together. And I will never forget the big grand standing ovation that it got at that festival. Everybody just started whooping and cheering even before the credits rolled. They started cheering and whooping as Ross and Rachel, as Steve and Leanna, were walking off into the distance and the building blew up. So now for the final reflections of Vigilante. This is my best film and it's worked for me a great deal, both as a content creator for my channel and personally what it has done for me. It's nearly won me an award at Cinemagic, and as a result of making the film and choosing to enter it into Cinemagic, I met Terry Bamber, who I have mentioned earlier in this retrospective. And it's one of my most viewed and most popular films during my time on YouTube. So it was just perfect in all senses. The writing, the acting, the direction, the filming, and the post-production. And again, I cite Vince Carter as my best character. I feel as an actor, this was me at my peak. But then again, that's subjective. It's how I feel personally. But Vince may be dead, and it may seem all happy endings for Leanna, but Vince will return to haunt Leanna many years later. But that will be covered in a future Diamond Dave retrospective. And we have a few more videos to get through before we reach that of Vince's return. So stay tuned next time when I will be reviewing the origin story to Big Bad Dave, the villain from Street Hero and Enforcer Butch, in which I take a stab at trying to give one of my villains a tragic backstory. Big Bad Dave, The Dark Path. If you liked what you have seen, please hit the subscribe button and give me a like. Take care and be lucky.